Hello everyone, this is part 29 of What If Naruto Was Abused and Leaves Konoha, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Naruto hopped happily over the rooftops of Sunagakure, basking in the familiarity that permeated the air of his home. It didn't take him long to find Tayuya. There was only one place she would go when in the mood for those delicious dumplings, Kushi Dango. A stand that she proclaimed to be the best purveyor of food in all the elemental nations, a compliment the owners took in stride. He ducked under the flaps of the stall, nodding his hello to the old woman who ran the stall and her son. He sat down on one of the seats, quickly nicking a stick of dango off of Fu's plate, knowing that if he did the same to Tayuya then he would likely lose a finger. Fu just yelped in annoyance before trying to snatch the stick from Naruto's hand. He quickly swatted the hand away while holding the stick just out of her reach. Thus began a small battle between the two, Naruto blocking all of Fu's attempts with one hand while eating each dumpling from the stick tantalizingly slow. Hey, come on, Onisan. Hey, Onisan, is there something different about your jacket? Naruto grinned. Fu wasn't a shinobi because she lacked observational skills after all. Tayuya looked around, also noticed the change to Naruto, except she actually knew what it meant. Whoa shithead, I knew you wanted to make Junin but I didn't think you would steal one of their jackets. Naruto just smirked, letting his coat hang open a bit more so the jacket was more visible, proudly displaying the symbol of his promotion. Nope, all mine. Tayuya raised her eyebrow. Honestly, she had thought it was some kind of elaborate prank. For somebody Naruto's age to make Junin was pretty much unheard of outside of war times. Whoa, what's Gaara think he's doing making you a Junin? Naruto looked a little hurt. Even if it was obvious, Tayuya said it merely in jest. What, you don't think I'm good enough to be a Junin? Tayuya looked at him in amusement. Naruto, I'm on your team, we've only done about 50 missions, not nearly enough to qualify for Junin. Naruto smiled sheepishly as he rubbed the back of his head. Hey, I guess the experience will just come with the job. Anyway, I'm pretty sure killing an S-ranked shinobi counts as an S-ranked mission, so I've done like 4 of those. Tayuya shrugged, finally letting a smile onto her face, a genuine one as she leaned over and hugged her boyfriend. Nice one, Naruto, I'm proud of you. Naruto smiled as well as he leaned into her shoulder, breathing in her scent as he returned the comforting hug. Suddenly Tayuya broke away from him, smirking devilishly. But don't think this makes you better than me. I'll still kick your ass up and down the training fields. Naruto returned the smirk, standing up so he was taller than her, looking down at the top of her red hair until she looked up. Oh really? She stood up but she was still shorter than him by a few inches, even so she managed to strike an imposing figure as she poked him in the chest. Yeah really. Naruto was about to comment when Fu sighed, looking between the both of them. Do we have to do this? Can't we just celebrate Onisan becoming a Junin without having a massive spar that will probably destroy a training field? Both Naruto and Tayuya looked at the younger girl oddly with amused smirks on their faces. That was generally how they celebrated most things. Suddenly Tayuya gained a rather mischievous grin as she wormed her way behind Naruto, pulling him back as she looped her arms over his shoulders. Celebrate I like the way you think, Fu. She quickly pulled Naruto into a deep kiss which he didn't mind returning in the slightest. Fu just sighed again as she returned to her dango. Can't you guys think about anything other than fighting or making out? Tayuya kept her innocent yet oh so devilish grin as she broke away from Naruto's lips. Oh, I think about plenty of other things. Fu sighed again, nearly smacking her head into the counter in exasperation. I don't think I'll ever understand you guys. Naruto broke out of Tayuya's clutches for just a moment to wrap his arms around Fu's shoulders in much the same way Tayuya had done to him, with less intimacy of course. Oh I don't know, soon you'll meet a guy and fall for him like Tayuya did for me. He heard an indignant but playful huff behind him but ignored it with a smile. Then after I scare him shitless for trying anything with you, then you can finally understand how we feel all the time. Fu just snorted but smiled at the thought all the same, picking at her dango. You wouldn't really frighten anybody I liked, would you? Naruto just smirked as she turned around, not answering, would you? His smirk turned into a full-on grin as Fu looked at him critically with a hint of worry. Hey, I'm your big brother, it's my job. Fu scowled as Naruto laughed. Tayuya quickly joined in as she draped herself over his body. How about that? Celebrating, shithead. Naruto just grinned as he quickly hoisted Tayuya onto his back, much to her delight as she yelped in unexpected surprise. Sure thing, Tayuya-chan. Suddenly he remembered they weren't alone and looked down at Fu in worry, not wanting to abandon the girl. The mint-haired teen merely looked up and sighed with a small smile. Just go on, Isan. I'm sure I can find something to do. Tayuya looked over Naruto's shoulder teasingly. Oh, gonna go find Yukimaru and maybe get started on that whole understanding us thing. Fu scowled, but Tayuya just giggled madly before Naruto shot her an apologetic look and vanished from the stand, no doubt back to their shared room. Fu sighed, finished off the last stick of dango and paid for her meal, waving to the nice stall owner as she got up and left. She stood outside in the street, wondering what to do now. She shrugged. Tayuya made a good point. She might as well go see Yukimaru, see how they were settling into sooner. Of course that was the only reason she was going, there was no other reason, nothing at all. Naruto appeared in their room, his lips already locked onto Tayuya's as they fell as a laughing heap onto the bed. Tayuya quickly took the initiative, straddling Naruto even as they shimmied further up the bed, accidentally knocking his head against the headboard. He winced and she looked down, but all she saw was a cheeky smile before she was flipped, suddenly looking up at Naruto's face, outlined by a glowing halo as his head blocked the ceiling light. She blinked in surprise. Naruto's hair practically glowed with the backlighting, making her reach up and gently stroke it. If Naruto was shocked by the action, he didn't show it, instead deciding to get across his appreciation in the form of a long, deep and loving kiss. They used chakra to create oxygen in their lungs, not having to part from one another's embrace for a good 5 minutes before they separated, smiling insanely as a single strand of saliva connected them at the lips. They rolled around on the bed, going back and forth with kisses of varying intensity until it suddenly disappeared out from under them and they both crashed to the floor. Once again they gently chuckled to one another before Naruto got up, helping Tayuya up with a hand as he did so. They brushed themselves off before Tayuya practically tackled Naruto back onto the bed, straddling him once again as she quickly began to tug at his coat. He could clearly see the gleam in her eye that told him what she wanted and sat up so she could pull off the red coat that was between her and her prize. As she did so, Naruto pulled gently at the hem of her shirt until she let up for a moment to allow him to slide it over her head. He smiled warmly as her head re-emerged from the shirt, allowing her vibrant hair to cascade down her shoulders like a shining waterfall. He blinked as he took in her form, never truly believing just how beautiful she was until he got to see it again. Quickly she repeated the process with his shirt, only she stopped halfway through, leaving Naruto with his arms sticking up and the shirt covering his face. Tayuya gently stroked a hand up his exposed stomach, tracing the visible edges of his abs before she planted a small wet kiss just above his navel. Finally he pulled the shirt the rest of the way off, looking at his girlfriend questioningly as she merely shrugged as a reply. O2 can play at that game, Tayuya-chan. She only had a millisecond to look curious before she found her arms pinned behind her back. Looking around she saw the smiling face of another half-naked Naruto, pinning her arms behind her as the original smirked. Quickly he began to very lightly run his hands up and down her toned stomach, feather-like touches that had Tayuya biting her lip to stop herself laughing or moaning at each pleasurable caress. She jerked up as Naruto planted one, then multiple kisses across her stomach before licking a small trail up to her breasts. He took one look at the bindings that separated him from Tayuya's chest before unraveling them in one smooth motion. His prize bounced for a moment as Tayuya's endowments were freed, nearly making her gasp as the slightly cold air in the room assaulted her now exposed nipples. Naruto only had time for a brief smirk before he attacked them, licking, sucking and generally doing all he could to bring Tayuya pleasure with just his mouth and hands. Soon Tayuya was a quivering mass on the bed, unable to gather the strength to even try and struggle against the clone holding her. By now Naruto knew her better than anybody else could or ever would, knowing the exact spots that sent her over the edge. As he let his hands continue the work his mouth started, he began to slowly kiss up her chest, making her torso shine from all the wet kisses. As he passed her collarbone he gently nibbled on it, making the redhead shudder with pleasure before he did the same thing to the side of her neck, only to end up at her mouth. Starved of his lips for too long, she hungrily attacked them, letting her tongue roam around as she moaned into the contact. Of course, all good things come to an end, and their end just happened to be a knock at the door of their apartment. Naruto broke away from Tayuya, leaving her lips puckered and her eyes closed expectantly, even as a scowl of sheer annoyance crossed over her features. Naruto stood up and left her with an apologetic look before he shrugged on his coat and walked to the door. Tayuya just sat with her arms over her chest, staring angrily at where she knew the door was, like she could see through the walls. "I'll kill them, I swear to Kami." Naruto chuckled as he opened it, surprised to see Gurren on the other side, smiling warmly. "Hey Naruto, Fu came over to visit us, so I just wanted to stop by and say hi." Naruto nearly broke out laughing, confusing Gurren as he stifled a snort. Eventually he caught himself and stood up straighter, smiling goofily at Gurren, amazed at her terrible timing. "Tell whoever the fuck it is we're busy." Naruto turned to Tayuya's voice, echoing from the bedroom as she called out in irritation. What if it was Gaara with a mission? He tried to make it sound innocent, but it came out with too many half-stifled chuckles. "Then tell him to fuck off." Naruto grinned as he shook his head and turned back to Gurren. The blue-haired woman was now blushing as she took in Naruto's half-dressed appearance and Tayuya's voice coming from the bedroom, tweaking to what was going on. "Oh, sorry Naruto, I should leave you two alone." Naruto nodded with a kind smile. "Come back in about an hour. Then we can catch up, maybe all go out and get something to eat." Gurren nodded, now rather anxious to leave the couple to get back to what she had interrupted. "Hey shithead, get the fuck back in here and finish what you started." Naruto's goofy grin turned a bit more mischievous as he glanced back at Gurren one more time. "Make that 2 hours." And with that he disappeared around the door of his bedroom, leaving a startled Gurren who quickly closed the door before she heard anything she didn't want to. "So we have guests and you get more naked." Tayuya just beamed happily on the bed. While he had been talking, she had managed to get out of her pants and sandals, leaving her in nothing but a pair of bright pink panties, laid out on the bed in a seductive pose. "Hey, this is our alone time, everybody else can just fuck off for all I care." Naruto just grinned as he jumped on the bed beside her, kissing her softly on the lips. It was Gurren. Tayuya kissed him back. "Don't care." Naruto smirked as he deepened the kiss. She wanted to come round and say hi. Tayuya grinned even more as she too deepened the kiss. "Still don't care." Naruto smiled cheekily, knowing he was getting under her skin. "Maybe we should have let her in, catch up." Tayuya finally broke away, sitting up as she crossed her arms under her chest and stared at him blankly. "What, are you gay?" Naruto just chuckled as he too sat up, admiring her body. "Definitely not." Tayuya just sighed as he pulled her into a warm hug before melting into the embrace. Suddenly a thought occurred to Naruto as he remembered something he had promised he would do. He broke away from the hug, leaving Tayuya to pout cutely at losing his body heat. "Hey, how about we go on a date?" Tayuya stopped pouting long enough to stare at him in confusion, waiting for him to clarify. "You know, me, you. Out doing something romantic." Tayuya couldn't help the smirk that overcame her features. "What suddenly brought this on, shithead?" Naruto just shrugged as he smiled sheepishly. "You know, between the way we sort of fell into all this and the sudden separation, we never really did all those things a normal couple do." Tayuya just looked amused as she shuffled closer to Naruto, latching onto his arm. "We aren't exactly a normal couple, shithead." He looked a little crestfallen as he glanced away. "Oh, right." Tayuya just slapped him playfully on the stomach. "I didn't say no." Naruto looked around, any hint of sadness gone as it was replaced by a beaming grin. Before Tayuya could enjoy it properly, he was assaulting her lips, now very intent on showing just how much he loved her. Naruto couldn't believe he was actually nervous. He had faced down people that by all rights should have left him dead, and he was scared about a date. It made absolutely no sense in his head. He knew Tayuya loved him, he knew he loved her. It wasn't like they were a new couple just starting out. Ever so he could feel the butterflies in his stomach fluttering about. The teasing from Kurama didn't really help all that much either. He had taken to pacing to try and ease his nerves. Doing something usually helped. In this case, not so much. "You ready to go?" All thoughts of nervousness disappeared when he glanced across to where Tayuya had emerged from the bedroom. If his jaw wasn't attached to his head, it might have dropped off in surprise. He knew the redhead was beautiful, but this was just ridiculous. Wow. Tayuya smirked, twirling on the spot to show off her outfit. I know, fucking smoking hot, right? Naruto could only nod dumbly, too caught up in what she was wearing. It was a short plain black dress with a strap going over one shoulder, letting the neckline slant off to one side, showing decent cleavage. It stopped at about the middle of her thighs, showing off perfectly smooth legs that just seemed to keep going forever. At least until they met her feet, covered by equally black, heeled sandals like what Tsunade wore but slightly higher. To top it off, she had her hair pulled into a loose ponytail. He had never seen it in anything other than a loose sheet that fell down her back. This revealed her creamy neck and shoulders, where her spiral mark could be spotted, looking like nothing more than an ordinary tattoo. She wore a loose bangle on her wrist, probably a gift from Temari or something she borrowed from the older girl, as he had never seen her wear it before. You look incredible. Tayuya had to suppress a small blush from breaking out over her face. I know, you clean up pretty well too, shithead. Naruto looked down at himself. He was just wearing his normal black shinobi pants with a different, lighter orange t-shirt and a black jacket slung over the top. His head was still a shaggy mess, but he had at least tried to straighten out his spikes, however unsuccessfully. In comparison to Tayuya, he felt completely underdressed, but if she didn't mind, he was willing to shrug it off. So, are we heading out to dinner at some restaurant or something? Naruto just smiled deviously as a response. Please. With that, he grabbed her shoulder, and after a moment of tingling, both vanished from the room. Naruto almost skipped over to where Fu lay panting on the ground, just barely supporting herself with her forearms. She was looking up at him with a glare while he just smiled back, as jovial as if they were just having some sibling bonding time. In a sense they were. Come on, Fu, you know you have to try harder than that. The younger girl's glare doubled in intensity as she tried to set Naruto on fire just using her mind. Shut up, Onisan, you know I've never beaten you in a spar. Naruto knelt down so their faces were only a few inches apart. And with that attitude you never will. Fu tried to strike Naruto at that moment, bringing her legs around in a sweeping kick to knock him off his feet. However, Naruto jumped over the fast, but not fast enough, attack and swiftly delivered a light kick to Fu's stomach, sending her skidding across the dusty training ground. She groaned as she returned to nursing her various wounds, mostly superficial, as Naruto didn't actually want to hurt her, but they were still debilitating. Come on, Imuoto, I think you've had enough. We'll go get something to eat so you can get your strength back. Fu seemed ready to protest. He should have known, considering her drive to outdo him, but he just leveled a stare that told her it wasn't optional. She sighed, nodded, and slowly stood up with some help from her brother. Once again she tried to take advantage of his guard being down by flipping him, except Naruto's guard was never down and he inverted the motion, somehow pulling Fu onto his back in the process. Now Fu, that wasn't very nice. The mint-haired teen just huffed but still gladly snuggled into her brother's back, reminded of all the times he would carry her during the training trip. Hey Onisan, you seem extra happy today. What happened? Naruto could only chuckle. It was true that a smile hadn't dropped from his face for the last few days, even when sparring with Fu. Maybe I'll tell you when you're older. Fu pouted but still only tiredly nodded. Naruto could be a real taskmaster when he was training, and even the training regimen he set her was nothing compared to the one he put himself through. Ever since his humiliating defeat by Kisame, he had nearly doubled his training, setting a grueling pace that pushed him every day. Even now, as he carried Fu off to a nearby stall, he had clones working on various techniques, no longer caring about the pain of receiving the memories if it made him stronger. Likewise, he was wearing large weight on his back for as long as it was safe and wouldn't damage his body. Fu knew her brother didn't take defeat very well, but even for him this was ridiculous. It was the kind of training that would kill people without his healing factor and QB to help deal with the strain of the extra memories. He jogged over to a nearby okonomiyaki cart, setting Fu down on a seat, much to her displeasure at being taken off his back, before plopping himself down in the seat next to her. To his surprise, they weren't there for very long before Yukimaru ducked under the flaps. He took one look at Fu, blushed, and attempted to leave. Hey Yukimaru. Both of the younger teens froze, Fu because she hadn't noticed the other boy enter, and Yukimaru because he was caught. He turned shyly, waving at Naruto and Fu, still with a small blush adorning his cheeks. Hi Naruto, hi Fu. Naruto smiled broadly. This was just too good an opportunity to miss for teasing. Hey Yukimaru, why don't you join us? The okonomiyaki's on me. Yukimaru tried to say no, thinking of a plausible reason why he had to leave. However, not finding any, he was forced to sigh and sit next to Fu. Naruto had made sure it was the only available seat remaining. So how are you doing, Yukimaru? I haven't really had that much time to see you. Settling into sooner well. The younger boy nodded, not turning around in case he accidentally caught Fu's eyes. They had been having a lot of awkward moments lately when that happened. Gurren is really liking it. She says it's good to be finally somewhere where we can just be left alone to do our own thing. Naruto nodded with the same fond smile that hadn't left his features since he and Tayuya finally went to the next level in their relationship. What about you, Fu? You making sure Yukimaru is settled in well? He could only laugh at the expression of utter embarrassment and annoyance that crossed over Fu's features at the same time. Onisan. Naruto just rubbed her firmly on the back as he stood up from the cart and ducked under the flaps. Well, I wouldn't want to come in between you two. Have fun without me and try not to do anything me and Tayuya wouldn't do. Fu once again let her head drop to the counter of the cart in embarrassment as Yukimaru did much the same thing in a more reserved way. Naruto chuckled as he walked off. Fu's training could always come later, moments for perfect teasing only came so often. He immediately hopped up onto a roof, trying to think where Tayuya might be, and if that failed he would head over to see Gaara. Unfortunately, at that moment there was an enormous explosion from the center of the village, the large cloud of smoke rising high into the air. Naruto spun to look at it, narrowing his eyes as he recognized the telltale signs of a summon. Wondering what was going on, he dashed over, sometimes bounding across entire rooftops in stride as he rushed to the center of the village. By the time he was on a high rooftop overlooking the square where many merchants flogged the goods, the massive clouds of smoke and dust hadn't dissipated. Naruto tried to peer through, but it was impenetrable. He heard a scuffle, the sound of metal striking metal before he tensed. A shadow emerged from the dust, flying right at him. He had a kunai at the ready but was shocked when a young girl flew out of the smoke, crashing into him. He looked down only to grimace at what he saw. The girl was badly wounded. A large gash ran up her torso, looking like some kind of animal attack. She was already dead. There was nothing he could do for her except gently lay her down on the roof and close her eyes. His hands balled up into fists and a snarl made its way onto his face, demanding to know who did this. He leapt down to the ground, making a small crater as he landed from all the weight he was carrying. He angrily glared out through the dust and smoke until it cleared enough to show a single figure, a short orange-haired man with his hair in a ponytail. He had the slashed forehead protector of a Megakure and wore the robes of the Akatsuki as he stood still, staring across at Naruto. Immediately the blonde noticed the man's strange eyes, a light gray with concentric ripples moving out from the pupil. Who are you? The stoic man didn't move, staring down Naruto with his strange eyes. As the dust cleared some more, Naruto was shocked to see an enormous pair of centipedes, their bodies black and orange. They too bore the man's odd eye pattern and were staring at him with equal intensity. Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. Naruto's knuckles were white now. This could only be one man, the leader of the Akatsuki, Pain. I haven't decided on it yet. If the man was bothered by the half-hearted joke, it didn't show on his expressionless face. Instead, he merely stood there as the two centipedes rushed Naruto, moving surprisingly fast on their many legs. The creatures were huge and were barreling down on Naruto fast, so he quickly created a clone and both clutched their wrists. When the balls of energy had formed, Naruto rushed forward to meet the creatures, the four of them meeting with a shriek and a large release of energy. Moments later and the Narutos were left standing, the two centipedes disappearing in a flash of smoke. Is that all you've got, Pain? The orange-haired man continued to stand impassively, nonplussed by the destruction of his summons. However, both looked around when the wind began to pick up around the two of them, the sand on the ground spinning madly until it slowly coalesced into the form of an incredibly angry Gaara. Without a single word he raised his hand, the sand around Pain fluctuating dangerously before covering the man in an instant. There was no mercy in Gaara's pale eyes as he stared at the floating mass of sand that housed the leader of the Akatsuki. Sandburi. Before he could pass judgment, the sand exploded outwards, surprising both Gaara and Naruto as they watched a large rhino suddenly appear in a burst of smoke. Before either reacted, it was already charging them down. It met a wall of dense sand, but not before it released a roar, spearing the sand with its enormous horn. Gaara blinked as he felt the tip of the horn grazed his throat before his hand twitched and the entire creature was blasted backwards, returning to the smoke that had heralded its arrival. Again, Pain seemed entirely uncaring that both his summons had been so easily defeated, staring at both Naruto and the Kazekage impassively. The Ichibi. Gaara narrowed his eyes at the man, already having come to the conclusion that Naruto had. Without any hint of hand signs, there was another burst of smoke. When it cleared, they could both see the form of an ox, its body riddled with various piercings, similar again to those that covered Pain himself. The only other difference was that this ox was about the size of a building, and it stared straight at them. It too charged at the duo, its horns brought low to skewer the two of them even as they began to move away. Grand bass drop. Both turned in time to see a small red comet suddenly descend on the ox, trailing a stream of lightning behind it before impacting on the ox's head. It tried to turn in time to meet the new arrival, but it was already too late. In a blow that would shatter a small building, Tayuya crashed straight into its head. The shockwave destroyed more than a few windows in the area as it released a sound that made even Pain cringe a little. The results were undeniable. In a moment of obvious pain for the ox, its head caved in, causing it to vanish seconds later. Tayuya joined them on the ground a moment later, watching Pain with a critical eye. That fucker Pain then. Both Gaara and Naruto nodded, tensed as they waited for the next attack. Instead, Pain just continued to stand there, as if waiting for something. It came in the form of a small green blur, shooting down from the sky. Calmly, as if he were catching a ball thrown by a child, Pain raised his arm. Fu appeared in his grip a moment later, surprise evident on her face before she winced as Pain began closing his hand around her throat. He turned his head, looking directly into her eyes with his strange, rippled pair. The Nanabe, convenient. His eyes opened a little wider as suddenly Naruto appeared in front of him, coat removed and fist cocked back, fury blaring across his face. Let FUU go. His fist impacted on Pain's face, momentarily contorting it before the orange-haired man was sent flying backwards, impacting with the wall of a nearby building. Fu dropped to the ground, clutching at her throat as she gasped in breaths. Moments after, Gaara and Tayuya were there, checking both of them were okay. Fu stood up shakily, assuring them that she was all right before all four of them turned to where Pain removed himself from the wall, brushing off the rubble like it wasn't there. I see you're going to make this difficult. Naruto growled as the sands began to pick up and electricity began arcing off of Tayuya's staff dangerously. Pain merely stood up, putting his hands through a few seals before he was surrounded by a multitude of people. They all bore the same eyes and all but one shared his orange hair color, each also carrying many piercings with the same black metal. The four shinobi looked across at all the new arrivals in Akatsuki robes, all of them shocked. Oh great, now who the hell are these assholes? None of them could answer as they stared at the 6 men across from them, all of whom stared right back. There was a light gust of wind that blew between the two groups before Naruto suddenly disappeared. He dematerialized inches away from one of the men, a taller one with spiky orange hair not dissimilar from how his used to be when he was younger. His fist was cocked back, but inches from touching his face it froze as if striking an invisible barrier. Shinra Tensei. Naruto's eyes opened wider in shock as he was blasted backwards at impossible speeds, never having been touched once. Tayuya and Fu could only watch on in shock as he went sailing past them, drawing out a massive crater in the street when he finally landed on the ground. There was a moment as time paused before Tayuya and Fu darted forward simultaneously, Fu going for the original man while Tayuya aimed for the tallest of the group, a man with his orange hair in long bangs that reached down his chest. The rest of the Akatsuki members would have helped the companions if walls of sand hadn't sprung up around them all. The one who Naruto had attacked merely stood calm, the sand bursting before it could cover him. Likewise, the largest of the group held up his hands and the sand around him fell lifelessly to the floor. However, the remaining two, a rugged-looking man and a slightly crazed man wearing a beige shawl, could do nothing as sand whips knocked them off their feet. It bought Naruto enough time to stand up groggily and see Tayuya firmly smack her staff into her target, sending the man up and over a building, to which Tayuya quickly followed. He would have followed her, but at that moment the one with the shawl appeared in front of him. Naruto went to slide under the man's legs, but out of nowhere a third arm flew out from under his robes, catching Naruto even as he slid underneath his legs. It picked him up and heavily tossed him across the clearing to once again skid down an adjacent street. With a smile reminiscent of Hidden, the man chased after him, quickly followed by the man Naruto had originally tried to attack. At this point Fu had reached her target, the one she believed to be the leader of this group, the first one to have appeared. She was still sore about him catching her so easily and wanted some payback. Payback in the form of her reared back fist. Unfortunately, while fast for somebody her age, this man proved to be faster. He caught her fist, quickly diverted it to one side before doing something similar with her follow-up attack. For a moment she realized he had just moved both her arms out to either side, but before she could correct the large gap in her guard, the man thrust both hands out, catching her in the stomach. She was sent flailing back, making almost as deep a trench as Naruto had moments ago. She tried to get to her feet, but the man was already next to her, lifting her up by her hair before painfully swinging her around once, releasing her so that she soared through the air. Before she could hit anything, her wings burst out of her back, flapping rapidly to reorient herself to the ground. As soon as she did so, she saw a massive bird-like creature suddenly appear, flying after her. Her eyes opened wide as she took off, darting through the sky as she tried to evade the bird, its summoner visible in its opened mouth. That left Gaara in the clearing with the large man and the more rugged man, the three of them standing in the ruined square, eyeing each other carefully. Gaara had seen what the larger one did to his sand when it got too closer. Without even moving, he tried to crush his second opponent. However, the heavy-set man was faster than he appeared, diving in front of his companion, arms outstretched as he seemingly absorbed the chakra right out of the sand. Gaara observed them again, noting their identical eyes and similar piercings. Interesting. Tayuya smiled happily as she cracked off blow after blow on the strange orange-haired man in front of her, not really caring that her blows seemed to be doing minimal damage. The man was fast, but with Tayuya's improvised swift release that she had been working on, she was more than able to keep up. Her staff sung as the lightning chakra that coated it tore through the air, leaving nothing but a bright blur as she hit him over and over. Each time the man would block with an open palm, not even wincing, but that seemed to be all he could do. Unfortunately, she grew a bit overconfident, attempting a wide sweeping blow she hoped would hit him in the side. He ducked under it, striking the staff at the last moment with unexpected force which nearly spun Tayuya on the spot. As it was, she kept her feet rooted but suddenly found her staff out to one side, her guard completely open. The man lashed out with a hand, firmly clasping Tayuya on the top of her head. Time seemed to slow for the girl as around her the color drained from the world, everything becoming fuzzy as she felt all the energy leak out of her body. It was like every ounce of happiness was being leached from her form, leaving her an empty husk. All she could do was look into the strange rippling eyes of the orange-haired man as her eyelids grew heavy. Go with the knowledge that your sacrifice will bring peace. Tayuya tried to blink, but it was too hard. The strange words seemed muddled and unfocused, like she was hearing them underwater. She could feel herself dying, becoming slow and sluggish as the life was literally pulled out of her body. All at once the world snapped back into focus as her body was allowed to fall to the sandy ground, her breathing returned to normal as color once again pervaded the world. Looking up, she saw the man holding the hand he had been griping her with. Through the palm was embedded a small blade of metal connected to a tough thread. She looked around to see Matsuri with a determined expression on her face, holding the other end of the thread. She tugged out the metal dart, swinging the yo-yo around her head before lashing out with it again. The man tried to grab the weapon as it flew through the air, but in an impressive display of control, Matsuri manipulated the dart, pulling it under the man's hand to securely wrap around his neck. Strangely, Tayuya felt back to 100%, as if the man hadn't touched her at all. Sensing her opportunity, she forced as much lighting chakra through her staff as she could before squarely swinging it into the man's unprotected temple while he was off balance. He took the blow full force, flying across the street as Matsuri released him in time. Tayuya smiled confidently at the large hole in the building the man's body had made, swinging her staff once to place it on her shoulder. Matsuri jogged over, concerned for what she had seen when she arrived. It had looked like the man was pulling some kind of spectral wraith out of Tayuya's body. However, before she could make it over, she had to suddenly duck as a long black spike sailed over her head. Likewise, Tayuya was forced to draw her staff again to swat similar stakes from the air as the man pulled himself out of the wreckage of the storefront. Tayuya frowned when he didn't even look hurt, however his eyes had narrowed imperceptibly. Crap. Fu had similar sentiments as she darted through the streets, flitting between arches and buildings as her wings propelled her forward. She looked back only to immediately fold in her wings, allowing herself to drop as the gruesome bird summoned soared overhead, its mouth open in anticipation. She unfurled them again to suddenly turn back on herself, pulling a barrel roll to fly between a particularly narrow window. Once out the other side of the building, she pulled up, hovering for a moment to try and spot where her pursuer had gone. She saw the shadow descending on her in time to roll out of the way, lashing out at the last minute with the kunai in her hand. She managed to get a solid gash down the creature's side, only to watch in surprise when it didn't disappear into a burst of smoke. Instead, it angrily rounded on her, the figure standing in its mouth eyeing her warily. Fu sighed as she once again pulled her wings in, dropping down to avoid the bird as it tried to eat her again. Unfortunately, it seemed to have learned from its last mistake and at the last moment pushed itself down with more speed that Fu could match while falling. Before she could open up her wings again, she suddenly found herself enveloped by a dark, wet and humid cave. Nearly retching from the smell, she tried to look around but was swiftly punched in the gut by a very powerful fist, flinging her further into the terrible-smelling cave. She impacted with a soft wall with a sickening squelch, making her gag as she felt her back get coated in some kind of slimy substance. Reacting on impulse, she ducked under another strong punch, not even sure how she reacted to it without being able to see. She dived to the side, sliding across the spongy but wet floor before kicking to her feet. Hoping she had a moment of respite, she began to concentrate, drawing on the chakra inside of her. Slowly a cloak of bubbling yellow chakra began to appear over her body as the two wings on her back lost their frail, translucent appearance. Soon the entire mist cavern was lit by Fuu's biju cloak, the fluctuating yellow light casting an eerie glow on the pulsating red walls. Her pure orange eyes opened wide in shock as she saw a rod of black metal come soaring at her. Reacting on instincts alone, she caught it, snapping the rod with one hand. Similarly, she caught the foot aimed at her stomach, flipping the short man back against the wall of the creature's stomach. Fu took a deep breath, and when she exhaled, a cloud of bright golden particles erupted from her mouth, covering the area in bright golden light. The man had to shield his eyes, but by the time he did, he was coated in the powder. Phosphorus dust. Fu didn't even have to make a hand sign. With a mere thought, the particles all suddenly erupted into flames. Expecting the man to cry out in pain at having his entire body set alight, she was surprised when he simply fell to the ground, using the slimy substance over the floor to put himself out before he was too badly burned. He stood back up slowly, his eyes narrowed in minute irritation as he rushed forward again. Fu quickly spun, her wings outstretched to give her the appearance of a spinning top as her body became a blur of motion. Already she was straining to maintain her chakra cloak, the angry and violent thoughts already trying to take over her mind. The man impacted on the edge of her spinning form, taking one of her chakra-infused wings right in the chest as he was sent crashing back into the wall of the stomach. The force would have been enough to put a crater in the wall of a building, but as it was, it proved enough to finally disperse the summon. It disappeared from around them, and quickly the smoke cleared to let Fu see the man dropping down below her. Apparently the summoned bird had flown quite high by the time it was dispelled. Fu finally allowed the chakra around her body to recede, gasping as the bubbling cloak slowly vanished. She winced. It was still painful to use and left her a bit weakened afterwards, but she couldn't deny how effective it was. The man tumbling to the ground far below them was evidence enough. Naruto winced as he pulled back his hand. Hitting the shawled man in front of him was like punching a metal pole. The man just grinned as he tried to punch Naruto. He blocked, feeling like he was defending against Tayuya's staff as he caught the next swing. He wasn't as surprised this time when a third arm suddenly shot out and he knocked it away with his foot. It happened again on the other side before a final two arms shot out of the robe, catching Naruto around the waist. His eyes opened wide as the robes around the man were shredded by what looked like a folding metal tail that reminded him of Sasori's Hiriko puppet. Focusing his chakra, he felt his muscles twitch in response to the lightning coursing through them as he sent out a large burst of wind chakra through the tenketsu in his front. He vanished from the man's grip just as the tail lashed through where he had been. Naruto smirked as he reappeared a few feet away before vanishing in a burst of unparalleled speed. Suddenly the multiple-armed man was assaulted from all sides, receiving powerful kicks that would have sent him skidding away if he hadn't immediately received equally powerful blows from the other side. He tried to lash out randomly to hit the attacker he couldn't see, but for Naruto the attacks were slow, painfully so. He dodged under another lazy swing before bringing his foot up and then down on the man's face in a powerful axe kick. He was actually flipped from the intensity of the attack, landing on his back as the ground underneath him cracked from the force. Before Naruto finished him, he was sent careening across the street to crash into a food cart. He emerged a moment later, covered in fruit as he stared at the orange-haired man with the spiky hair, his arm lowering to his side. For the first time Naruto noticed the distinct lack of a ring on the man's finger, and when he thought about it, none of them had. Who are you? The man stood taller, still keeping his features set in an impassive mask while his strange eyes observed the blonde. I am the judgment of a god, come to teach the world pain so it may strive for peace. Naruto narrowed his eyes at the gibberish, not understanding what he was talking about. This body is merely a vessel for a higher power, I am the Deva Path. The man that Naruto had been beating around the street stood up, using a few of his arms to push himself off the floor. I am the Asura Path. Tayuya used her staff to deflect another strike from one of the strange black rods her opponent could seemingly produce from nothing out of his sleeves. She batted it away, not letting it touch her. Last time she had let one of the rods scrape her, she immediately felt dizzy and off balance. She knew enough about chakra to know the material somehow disrupted the flow of it in her body. She twirled her bow staff once before attempting to bring it down on the man's head. He caught it before turning to look at her. I am the human path, Tayuya snorted as she ripped her staff out of his hands, swinging around so it smacked him in the temple, once again throwing him across the street. I'm Tayuya, nice to fucking meet you. Fu flew as fast as she could, twirling her body through the air in an attempt to beat her opponent to the ground. She passed him a few hundred feet above the earth, catching herself on her wings before spinning in the air, firmly connecting her foot with the back of his head. He stopped in mid-air, the force of Fu's blow enough to halt his fall momentarily. She used the opportunity to grab his arm, using it like a lever to swing her body around even as he turned to look at her. I am the animal Pa. He didn't get any more time to speak as Fu's foot connected with his stomach, launching him towards the ground even faster. Whatever. Gaara was doing everything he could to try and crush his two opponents, but they worked well in tandem, the larger one using his ability to absorb chakra to protect the other. His sand blocked yet another attack from the strange black rods they used before trying to swat the man away even as it fell to the ground uselessly. He was actually beginning to grow annoyed by opponents who had the uncanny ability to absorb the chakra binding his sand together. It was forcing him to think of other ways to beat them. Suddenly both stopped, looking at him strangely as the larger one spoke up. I am the Preta Path. Likewise the more rugged-looking one to his left slid another rod out of his sleeve. I am the Naraka Path. Gaara coldly observed them, narrowing his eyes at the odd behavior. I am the god, I'm Kazekage. The ground around the two of them erupted suddenly. And you will not leave my village alive. That will be it for this video. If you want more, comment down below, like, subscribe. And see you guys later.